Welcome. I actually do have the audio set up, so you know what? We're gonna play the opening. Welcome to Tech Over Tea, episode 24. I really need a better solution than this. Welcome to episode 24 of Tech Over Tea. I'm host Peter Robson. I really need to have a solution for this where, I can just play it and it just fades out. This wouldn't be a difficult thing to do. All I would need to do is put it into Caden Live, Audacity, anything like an edit audio, choose the fade out effect and be done. But I haven't done that yet. So, is that desynced? That is really desynced. Jesus, okay. Well, that's going to be fun to fix up. I don't know why that keeps happening. It seems to just be a problem on the solo episodes. It doesn't seem to be as much of a problem on the the guest episodes, but the audio is really desynced. Obviously, for you guys, it'll be completely fine, but I'm noticing it's pretty bad. Also, obviously, if you're listening on the audio as well, obviously the audio can't be desynced if all you have is audio. So, shouldn't be an issue for you guys either. Yeah. Anyway, it is relatively late in the afternoon today. It's actually going on 4 p.m. Usually I'll try to get the podcast recorded much, much earlier, but this week has just been an absolute mess. So, tomorrow I'm going up to my parents' place, and because of that, I've had to, get stuff prepared for next week early and get uni stuff done, and everything's just had to be crunched down into 4 days. So last weekend I actually had to prepare 14 videos, which not fun. I really would not recommend preparing 2 weeks of videos in a single period. I guess it's 3 days, 3 or 4 days where I'm preparing 14 videos. That might not sound like a lot, but when you're doing, software showcases, software reviews, tutorials, things of this nature, it can get a little bit, tiring. And I just realized my mic was actually too high. So, I really should put more effort into the sound checks and, actually check the sound rather than just making it an exclusive thing for library. But I fixed it up within the first few minutes, so should be fine. So... God, I do not take this podcast seriously. Why should I? It's only got 9,000 subscribers on library and 150 on YouTube. Is it 150 on YouTube? We're going to check. I'm pretty sure it is. So if we go over to Tech Over Tea, actually, that's a good topic for today. I'll show you that in just a moment. Tech Over Tea, YouTube. Is this going to bring it up? Probably not. YouTube. My podcast is out. Hey, look. We found it. Okay. And what is my key? That one? Yes, it is. Cool. 150 subscribers over on YouTube. 32 views on the episode 23. That's good to see. So this is actually being recorded the day episode 23 went out. Once again, because I'm going to be busy this weekend and I can't exactly go to record a podcast when I'm at my parents' place. I could do it. I could do it with my laptop and take my mic up there, but I'd rather not. So I'm just going to get it done the day before. And that's the same reason why this is another solo episode. I was supposed to do the Mr. Robot episode soon, but that is going to get done on the weekend. And I can't do it this weekend because parents. And the other guest I was going to have... Hopefully I can bring him on next week. If I can't, I will have to just give up on that one for now and just do the Mr. Robot episode and just keep going. And eventually I'll bring him on, but as much as I like doing the solo episodes, I do want to bring another guest back on. It's been a little while, and I enjoy having the guests on. Or at least I want to get a guest back on before it's time for Connor's next episode, because I don't want to roll... 6 solo episodes, then go into the planned one I always have with Connor, and then, more solo episodes. As of next week, it should be better. Once I get rolling again, I'm going to say, I've said if we don't do it next weekend, I'm just going to, move on to the next set of guests and then go from there. But that's one of the good things about having a solo episode. It's not or a solo podcast. It's not oh, you have to have a guest every single week, otherwise the show doesn't go forward. I can choose to have a guest, I can choose not to have a guest. And even though I feel like some of the no guest episodes are really not that good, some people seem to like them. I was mentioning last week, one of my top tier patrons who's paying $32 a month, he told me why he does that. It's a really good reason. I'm not going to share it here because it was a DM, but he said that he liked last week's. I felt when I was going back and looking at it that it was an absolute train wreck. So that gives me hope for this week, because I didn't plan this one really. I still have some leftover topics from last week, but a lot of what I'm going to be going over, I don't have planned. So I don't know how long this is going to go for. I have about 2 hours till I have to go to work, or at least I have to make dinner and then go to work. But yes. So you know what? Because we're already talking about this, I'm just going to bring something else up. So this is, okay. So this is my domain right here, which is not being used right now. This is just techoverT.xyz. So when I eventually go and set my website up for the podcast, it will be over at this domain, and my main website will be over at brodyrobertson.xyz. Why XYZ? Because XYZ is cheap. I actually don't have another reason for it. I like XYZ because XYZ is cheap. I could have went with there's like a domain that usually gets given out for free. I can't remember what it was. It was for some like third world country of some description. I don't remember what one it was, but I could use that one. Rather not. I'll pay for XYZ because XYZ at least sounds, you know, techie, and I like it. What I wanted to talk about was the people who own techoverT.com. So I didn't realize this before I started the podcast, but it turns out there's a blog called techoverT. They also talk about, I don't know if they talk about Linux. They don't seem to have that many posts. They have one post. So I don't know how, greetings, this is a test post. I don't know how long this has been around for. But yeah, I actually haven't read this. So I found the website. I was like, I'm going to hold on to this for a while, but let's actually have a look through it. So howdy, I'm your friendly, tech-obsessed expatriate and writer / editor here at techoverT. So this person has this blog. They're calling himself an editor. Has written one blog post, and yeah, I'm not going to read through all of this because it's going to be too much. So I'm guessing these are the two people who run it. So Jacob Hartman and also Susan Sons. That sounds like a fake name, but I guess not. Sounds like a character from a DC comic. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I didn't have much to say about this because there's not really much going on about this. They have why do they have an RSS feed set up when they have one post? When was it posted? April. So you made one post in April, and you've done literally nothing else with the website. Last time I checked, it's August right now, so it's been a little while. But I also started the podcast before this existed. I actually thought this might have been around a bit longer. Once again, didn't actually check stuff on this. So they might have owned the domain longer, but I have been using the name techoverT longer. So I don't have a trademark on it. I probably should do that. But the fact that this exists as well, it is a blog. So I don't know how trademark law actually works with that. Whether I actually even could do that at that point. Now that this actually does exist. I don't know. Actually, I have no idea. But the fact they're in the same, they're in the same sphere, obviously, in tech. But because they're not a podcast, I don't know if it would be a problem. Once again, this is also like this is me talking about law when I have literally no idea what I'm talking about. And Australian copyright law is going to be different from US copyright law. Same with like trademark law and all that. So I actually have no idea how that would actually go down. I don't actually care enough. Maybe I should, but I don't. So yeah, techoverT.com. If you guys ever search for your name, actually, if we search for techoverT, what actually comes up? Do I come up or do they come up? Hey look, I'm actually at the top of the searches. So we have techoverT on YouTube, techoverT on Stitcher, more Stitcher, Twitter. Yeah, okay, I completely own the top of the search. And then we have the a thing from the Victorian government, Nullumbik Tech Tea and Tales. I'm not going to click on images while this is on the screen, just in case something shows up, but let's see. Oh no, okay. So they get one slot on the front. So we get all my stuff, Tech of a Tea. We have my two slightly different profile pictures. If you didn't notice, on some services, I use a slightly different profile picture than others because of the way that the logo is laid out. On the websites where they do like a circle crop of the image, it doesn't actually look that good if I leave it in the default configuration. So I have to move the cup more towards the center. Otherwise, like the bottom of the cup gets cut off and not as much of the steam gets cut off, and it doesn't really look anywhere near as good. So I think it makes more sense to move it up like this, but you'll notice if you ever go do look at the profile pictures that I do slightly change them depending on the service. Now you know something new about the way I structure this. Yeah, it seems like it's mainly just lots of teacups, and you have that one image of the people who have the same name as me, but I should probably not scroll down more, just because I haven't tested it. Yeah, we have another thumbnail, which back when the thumbnails looked really, really bad for the podcast. Honestly, I don't know what I was doing with those. I was really lazy. I just didn't want to put any effort into the podcast thumbnails whatsoever. But this, it's not great. There's definitely some improvement that can be made to the current style for the thumbnails, and especially for the solo episodes. The solo ones, I don't think look that great at all. I'll bring that up. So if we go over to the Tech over Tea YouTube. Here we go. So with a guest, it looks alright. So I'll zoom in on this just a bit. With a guest, it looks alright. When there's not a guest, I'm not really sure what to do with it. There's sort of like these black borders that end up appearing around it because I don't really know how to fill up the space. If I make my image too big, it ends up cutting my face out with the bar down the bottom. So I don't think that works, but if I make it too small, then I get these black borders around the side. I don't really have anything better to do with them. So I'm not sure how I should address that. Maybe I should just ask the guys in my Discord. They've typically end up being pretty helpful. At least telling me when I'm doing things that are really stupid, if nothing else. So yeah, okay, you can probably see it here. Maybe I should change the cropping of this. As you can see, the top of the steam is cut off, but the bottom of the cup isn't, and that's because I've just shifted it up slightly. It's still not the best framing. It's just because it's a weird shape that it's pretty difficult to actually frame it. Maybe I could use the Tech over Tea big logo for this, but then the big logo doesn't really look that great when it's at a size this small. It's really difficult to obviously read the text itself. So I don't know what to do with that. Yeah, I don't know. So I mentioned just before that I am actually going to work in just a bit. So when I say just a bit, I mean 3.5 hours actually. But yeah, anyway, this is really late for the podcast. Normally I'd be recording much earlier. Anyway, not the point. So I usually work at a specific store, and lately I've been working at a very different store. It's maybe 2 minutes closer, and the reason why I've been working there, they needed some people to help out because apparently they have a lot of staff there who just don't show up to work, which is good for me, not good for them. Good for me because my main store has someone who doesn't understand how to roster, apparently. So 2 weeks in a row now. Now this is not a new thing for him. I just realized that he was back from holiday the second it started happening. So 2 weeks in a row, I have had a shift booked on a day that I have booked off. Now you would think that the system for my store doesn't let you do that, and it doesn't, but he somehow manages to do it anyway. I have no idea how he manages it, but frequently when he's working, someone will end up with a shift booked on a day that they have booked off. And usually it's me because I don't work weekends and he likes to book me on weekends. Now, should I work weekends? Probably, but also I have this 5-day block where every single other grocery manager somehow manages to, roster me in that block, but somehow he can't. So yeah, 2 weeks in a row, I have had a shift booked on a day that I do not want to work. Saturday night is one thing I can accept working a Saturday night. Saturday at 6 in the morning, I'd rather not. I like my sleep. I get up at 8 in the morning. I go to bed at midnight. 8 hours sleep every night. It's a very simple way to do 8 hours. You go to sleep at midnight, you wake up at 8. Probably should get a bit of, buffer window in there, just so I'm not going to sleep at 8, because it takes time to fall asleep. So really, I sleep for maybe like 7.5, 7 hours, depending on how much I'm staring at my screen just before I go to bed, which I probably shouldn't be doing. It is messing with my messing with my sleep a lot. And I have been noticing that I've been a bit more tired lately, which is not fun. Because I made recording video earlier today. Not a lot of fun. But anyway, that wasn't the point. I'm thinking of switching over to that store because I'm at least getting hours there. There was a email that got sent out by my work. You can work out where I'm not going to say it on the show, but you can work out where I work if you go find my LinkedIn. At least you can find out what company I work for. They sent out an email saying, oh, you worked less than 20 hours this week. Would you like to apply for other stores? Like, does it not say in your system that what my availability is and other stores can see those the numbers of people who want to... I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand how the system for this store is so broken. Here's one big thing. So when I open up this website, sometimes it will show me the database results for the week before my roster exists. Now, at my store, basically we show the current week's roster and the next week's roster. Sometimes it will show me it'll try to pull the information for the previous week, which they can't actually show me for whatever reason. I don't know why they don't make it easier to see older rosters. But they try to pull in that older information, or we'll try to pull in the newer information. But when you go to the page, the thing it's always trying to query for by default is the current week. Sometimes, though, it shows the wrong week. Now, I don't know how you manage to break a SQL database this much that you ask for a date and you get a different date. I don't know how they manage this because it's been going on for a couple of years and it hasn't ever gotten better. They've messed with random other little things with the interface, but they've never managed to fix their REST API. And I genuinely don't know how you manage to break a REST API like this. If I say I want the information on August 7th, 2020, sure, we'll go with that. If I say I want the information for that date, all you have to do is match up those dates and then return everything that matches up with that. And let's say that we'll go with a better example. Let's say that we want to see the roster for someone's specific ID. So you would say, okay, let's say my ID is 523. Actually, we'll go ID 1. 1 is easier. So let's say I have the ID 1. What you would do is you would match the ID column against that variable, and you would return everything that matches that variable, right? And then let's say that you want to look at it for a specific week. Well, what you would do is you would look at the date column and say, okay, between this date range and this date range, return this. And how do you find out what the date you want to find is? Well, what you do is you say, okay, what is the date today? What is Monday of this week? What is Sunday of this week? Okay, let's get the things between that range and return that. Somehow, though, they don't manage, it doesn't work. Sometimes it will return different weeks, and I don't understand how you manage to do this. I don't understand how you can get your system so broken that it asks for the current date and returns a different day. Unless your system, it would be one thing if it always returned the wrong week. That would be different. That would mean that your system clock on the server would be wrong. But it sometimes returns the wrong week. That's the part that makes it weird. If it was always broken, that would be one thing. The fact that it's sometimes broken makes no sense. And I could rant about how terrible some of these systems for different places I've worked at have been. So at McDonald's was actually worse. So at least at the current place I'm at, you can't... at least for the current place I'm at, you can't access other people's profiles. So... they fixed this already, so yeah. I don't know if it's different for the US McDonald's, but for McDonald's in Australia, when you went to your profile on your staff login, if you took the ID in the okay, you know, we're just gonna do a bit of an example here. I'm going to what's that website where I can? Okay, I'm just gonna do it in DuckDuckGo. Sure, that'll work. I just need some sort of text box. Okay, so if I, you know, let's say that my thing is like this. Okay, we'll just write it off camera just so nothing gets auto-filled. I might have, I don't know. Okay, so let's say that your URL is something like this. Okay, so it's www.mcdonalds.com.au. Right. Well, let's say that you want to get the information for the user with ID, I don't know, 1. We'll go with ID 1 again. Now, what you would think is that if I log into my account and my ID is ID 1, and then I just, you know, put the number 2 in here, it's not gonna let me see that. Now, that is how a sensibly designed system that actually had permissions set up would work. Not McDonald's. No, 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 no. At McDonald's, what you could do is if you had logged in to a staff account, you could put in whatever number you wanted and look at any other profile. Why was it like this? Because the devs were lazy. How easy was it to fix? Pretty easy, because you know that when someone is logged into the website, you know what their ID is. Well, what you would do is, hey, they've requested the information for ID 2, and their ID is ID 1. They shouldn't be able to see that. You don't even have to do any sort of proper user credentials, any proper user validation. All you have to say is the ID different from the ID? If yes, don't let them see it. If no, they can see it. But McDonald's wasn't like that. So I'm going to assume that what ended up happening was they let maybe some interns develop the website or something like that. Maybe they let some volunteers develop it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the CEO who's never programmed in his life developed it. I don't know who developed it. All I know is that it was really, really busted. And, while we're just, you know, complaining about how broken some websites are, if you want to do a new line in HTML, or you want to have a paragraph break in HTML, there's a couple of ways we can do this. So we could use a div. A div is a pretty basic way to do it. Generally, though, if you want to have a break in a paragraph, usually not use a div. Divs are usually for logical breaks, or not logical breaks, they are paragraph breaks, but they're also breaks in the content of the page. So normally, if you want to have, say, one article and a different article, you could put those in different divs, but you wouldn't say, here's paragraph 1, paragraph 2, put those in different divs. It's technically correct and it'll produce the exact same result, but normally you would use a paragraph tag for that. So, the way you don't do it is \n, and that is how it was set up on the Centrelink website. Now, if you don't know what Centrelink is because you live in a different country, Centrelink is these guys right here. Let's go to the Centrelink website. Basically, it is our, not social security, that's not the one I'm thinking of. It's the way we pay people who either have who have lost their job, have some sort of disability and can't work. Basically, what's the word I'm thinking of? Welfare. It's a welfare system, that's what it is. So Australia's welfare system is Centrelink. So this is a government-funded project. So you would assume, there we go. So you would assume, I was showing the wrong thing. You'd assume that maybe they would have some money to hire devs. And sometimes they do. The website's actually changed quite a bit since the last time I looked at it. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they will leave someone putting \n in their webpage because they let the intern write it. To be honest, I reckon I know what they might have done. My university will partner with some businesses to do people's honors projects. It's very possible that someone uploaded that page as an honors project and didn't know how to program, because in my course, you do first year in Java, you do a bit of Python as well. Now, Python, Java, you do new lines in text with \n. It's not until you get into like web development where you actually do some web development. So it's possible, maybe it was a different university, but I guarantee it wasn't someone who was a actual developer. It was someone who was still learning, who didn't know what they were doing. Either that, or maybe I don't know what they were building the website in. It could have been like PHP on the back end or something, and they let a bit of PHP slip through. Once again, not something that should actually make it to your deployment system. It's something you should probably pick up pretty early in testing, especially when you run the website and see, oh, there's a \n on my web page. That's something you should probably notice pretty quickly. But not Centrelink. I'm sure there's other websites out there I can think of that are like really broken like this. It seems like their website's, passable now. I know that the South Australian car registration, they have broken their website recently. So they used to have user accounts. Now they actually have hidden the user account. So I still have my login for my account, right? I still have my login for my account, but now to actually go and register your car, you have to use like the paper form and like fill out all the information of the paper form. The way it worked before is you could just log into your account and it's just like, here's the vehicles you own, here's the ones you need to re-register. Like if you own boats and stuff, it'll show those in there as well. I don't own a boat because do I look like I have boat money? My car's falling apart. Anyway, ignoring that, now you actually have to like grab like the registration note you get and just fill out all of the details, which is a massive pain because it's like a 12 number string. It's not that big of a deal. It's annoying though. Especially when I know the user account still exists there on the back end. It's not like they would go and delete their user account system. That would be the dumbest thing they could ever do. All they've done is just hidden the ability to use it. So now you have to do everything manually for some reason. I don't know why. I think this was a fairly recent change as well because it still shows on the actual registration note the old way to do it. So you'd say like, go set up for like a SA Reg account, I think it was called. SA Rego. We gotta find it. SA Reg. Google. SA Rego. Easy Reg. Here we go. Easy Reg transactions. So there we go, that one. So this website, it used to have. Okay, I think they might have merged into like this My SA Gov account. They really like merging accounts together. So, okay, there is still some sort of Easy Reg account, but it's now been merged into this other account thing. So I don't know what this actually encompasses. We're gonna find out what this encompasses. So, My SA Gov. What is under My SA Gov? Okay. Okay, so actually, looking at it now, it seems like it's the exact same thing as the Easy Reg account, but they've gone and renamed it for some reason. So it's still things like check your demerit points, renew or replace your license, things like this. So I think this is submit a medical self-assessment. Sure, that's always being used for legitimate purposes. It seems like, why is proof of age here? Oh no, that makes sense. Okay. Anyway, I think they have just merged Easy Reg into some other thing to do like proof of age and stuff online. So now you don't have to necessarily go into a Service SA branch, which I guess is nice because I don't like going to Service SA. There's not many of them and they're always really packed. The one at Elizabeth is usually not horrendous, especially if you go there around like middle of the day. If you go there towards like the end of the day or the start of the day, that's when everyone else is there. Also, don't go there on the school holidays because that's when all the teenagers are there trying to get their license. Any other time, it's fine. So that pretty much eliminates most of the year. Just avoid going to Service SA. But if you have to go, I guess you can do it through My SA Gov now. Sure. I'm not sure how many people even care about me talking about the South Australian government. I doubt there's a single person. Wait, no, I know there's at least a single person who listens to this podcast who is from South Australia and is my stepdad. But he probably doesn't care about this either. Yeah. I don't know what that start was. None of that was planned. I think the only thing I had that was planned there was talking about switching to a different store, which I am genuinely considering doing. Seems like the management there likes me. Once again, as I said, because I show up to work, which generally is pretty much baseline. If you can do that, you're probably going to be better than most people in a minimum wage job. Speaking of not showing up to work, though, I have a shift next Saturday, though. I'm deciding whether I tell the manager the day before. That's a good idea. I might tell him the Friday. So I start at 6 a.m. I might tell him on Friday, like as he's leaving, that he booked me on a day that I have booked off. That could be fun. Then he won't find someone to do it, and that could maybe send a lesson. I don't care. I don't want to be there at firstly, I don't want to be there at 6 in the morning. Secondly, I like my sleep. Thirdly, I'm thinking of starting streaming soon, so I definitely don't want to be working in the morning, because in the morning is probably going to be the good time to stream, unless I stream at night, which is going to be an issue. I'll have a look into when a good time is. It seems like... okay. I'm probably going to be changing the time I upload my videos, because it seems like most of my views are about 4 hours before I upload, which is weird, because I would have thought that the time when I uploaded would be when most of the views happen, but they've somehow shifted way before, and that may be part of the reason why my views are down right now, but I don't know, because I haven't actually changed anything. Did like daylight savings change in the US in some states or something? I actually don't know, because what happened for me is I had my I'm gonna find it. My impressions were at like 60,000 a day, and then the next day they dropped to 30,000, and I don't know what exactly the cause of that was, whether there was some sort of time change or something like that, or what the deal is. So if we go to reach impressions, yeah, here we go. I'm just trying to find stuff that, yeah, here we go. So here, back in mid-July, 64,000, 65,000. It was, before this point, it was pretty much the same as well. So if we go back a bit, we'll see pretty much the same the entire way. And then we hit this point, and well, I don't know if it was something I uploaded at that point, which it's weird because those are pretty standard videos, like VimB, pretty normal video, Gron, pretty normal video, and also Stop Running Commands You Don't Understand, pretty normal video, and then after that it's just like down to 42,000, and it seems to have leveled out now, and it's going back up a little bit. I don't know what exactly happened there, but the other thing was, if we go to audience, so I usually upload at this point, where is it? In the middle of these 2 points here. So I upload at 6:30 a.m. my time. I believe this would be in my time. So I upload around this point here in the lighter purple part. But as you can see, on Sunday, most of my views are like 4 hours earlier, or most of my views are like 3 to 4 hours earlier. So I'm thinking of moving my upload back a little bit, which probably isn't going to be that big of a deal, seeing as though most people watch my content much, much earlier. It shouldn't be that big of a deal, but I don't know if those are people watching my older stuff, because there is a breakdown here of when people are uploading, but it doesn't show you if this is like your newest content or if this is people going back and watching older stuff. Presumably, the newer stuff is getting watched when it comes out, because after that point, like, the views tend to slow down. So I don't know. I'll try it out, see what happens. I could always obviously move it back to my current upload time anyway. Nothing really changes on the... Like, if you watch my videos later anyway, nothing actually changes for you. And if you watch the videos early, well, I guess the video is going to be there early. Yeah. Because as you can see, because we're in the light purple stage, as we go further into the day, this is the point where my views tend to drop. You know what? This might actually be... I might have been overthinking it. This might actually be the reason why my views have dropped. For whatever reason, I've had it like this for a while, though. That's the thing. That's what's confusing me. It's not like this trend has just suddenly started. My views have been set up like this for a couple of months, and even so, it's only suddenly, like, the impressions have only suddenly dropped. So, even, like, that's the only cause I can possibly think of it being, because there's, like, none of my videos have been demonetized or anything like that. If there was something weird happening there, that would probably be the first thing I would notice. Everything is always green, so I don't know, like, that, I can't see that being a problem. I can't see a channel, having all monetization accepted, and then having the impressions cut be, like, linked together. That doesn't seem plausible to me. I think the most likely thing that I can actually address is moving the upload time. So if I move it back to, what would that be, like 3 a.m. my time, maybe that'll fix it? I don't know. YouTube does say that publish time is not known to directly affect long-term performance of a video, which is obviously bullshit. So if you know anything about... If you know anything about how YouTube works, basically, most of your views come when you first upload the video. And if you don't end up pushing yourself outside of your, I guess, your main viewership group, you're very unlikely to actually keep moving to further groups. So the way it works is sort of like this. So, let's say we have this little shell here. So this little shell, there we go. I forgot what my camera was. This little shell right here represents my viewers. So the people who will watch everything I upload, pretty much regardless of what it is. So this little group of people, they're my viewers. So at the start, when I first upload something, it gets pushed to these people. And then when they watch the video, it gets pushed out to a slightly larger group. And then if they like the video, they keep, you know, responding to it, they share the video, they like it, things like that. They interact with the video. Once those people have had their interactions, we expand to a bigger group, which is, as we expand these groups, basically we're interacting with, or maybe interacting, interacting is probably the best thing I can think of. We are... Okay, we'll go with showing. We're showing the video to less and less relevant groups of people. So when we're first showing it to the group of people who watch all of my videos, they're the sort of people who are going to definitely like my video. Then maybe we move out to, say, like the DistroTube subscribers and Luke Smith subscribers, then the general Linux people, and then the general tech people, and then people who are linked to tech after that, and then people who are maybe in gaming, and so on and so forth. This is a cycle that can technically expand until you hit every single user on the platform. Obviously, if you get to a point, say you get to like general tech, it's very unlikely that a very Linuxy video is going to actually appeal to those people. So once you get to that point, you're very likely to stop at that point, and that's kind of all the people that your video is going to be shared to. Now, don't ask me how the videos that come up from like 12 years ago and then suddenly get 1 million views, how that works. I have no idea. I think that's the YouTube algorithm just... I don't know. It's just breaking occasionally, and we'll just show something from 12 years ago. For example, I got a video from, you probably have heard of him. He's a dude called Tom Scott. Lately, he does videos in some sort of computer museum of some description in Cambridge, I think. He also does computer file videos. Not much anymore, but he also did computer file videos. So, I got a video recommended to me from 2007, I believe, where basically what he was doing was trying to shave off his fingerprints. Not a good idea. It went really bad for him. He ended up doing it so much that his finger, like, he couldn't touch anything because it would just burn, and all the time it was always burning. He realized you couldn't actually, like, scrape off your fingerprints. It wasn't going to go down very well. You would pretty much have to cut off pretty much all the skin on your thumb to actually make that happen, which is going to be very painful. It can technically be done, but it's not like you could just put your fingers on, like, a grinder and then... Well, yeah, on electric sander, not a grinder. Don't put your fingers... Definitely don't put your fingers on on a grinder. Electric sander's bad enough. Grinder would cut them off. Anyway, if you wanted to actually grind your fingerprints off, basically you would be at the point where you're pretty much getting down to the bone. So technically it can be done, but it's not like if you wanted to, like, rob a bank or something, you could just put your fingers on a electric sander and then be good. Gloves are much easier. Not recommending you rob a bank, but if you do want to rob a bank, I would recommend gloves over sanding off your fingerprint. That would be my suggestion, at least. That's how I would go about it. I feel like that would be a quicker and less painless way to do it. At least that's me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if anyone has an experience, you know, sanding off their fingerprints and knows it's a better way to rob a bank, let me know. You probably don't want to admit to robbing a bank in my comment section, but hey, if you want to do that, it's your life, I guess. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, right. 12-year-old videos getting recommended. Don't understand how that works, but for regular sort of content, when you upload it and then it expands out to groups, that's a pretty well-established idea. Now, the way that it expands out to the groups, that is not understood properly, but the fact that the interest groups are a thing and basically that is the way that your content does expand, that is well established. Yeah. So I'm probably going to, as I said, reduce my upload time. My views are starting to recover now. I still don't know what actually happened to my views. I don't know what happened. Like, if it was a slow decline where it's like, we've hit a point where views are down for the year and then whoom, back up. That's one thing. I kind of want to see what happens around Christmas then. Because obviously Christmas is always a big time for views because everyone's at home, and also it's a big time for donations if you're a streamer because people tend to be a bit more giving around that time, even though everyone's already spending lots of money on gifts and things like that. People are still willing to spend lots and lots of money on other things. So we'll see how that ends up going. Because last Christmas was a pretty big year, pretty big month for the channel. I think I got, even at the time when, that was before I got the shout out. I got, I think, a couple hundred subscribers just on Christmas. And that was pretty big at the time. Because I think I only had like maybe 400 or 500 subs at the time. So getting that many was pretty insane. Now, I normally get that many every month now, but that is also dropping because of the impressions. So hopefully the impressions pick up. Because my click-through rate is pretty good. I'm getting like a 13 to 15% click-through rate, but that's also likely due to the fact that my views are down. But generally, click-through rate doesn't really scale like that. Usually, click-through rate is pretty consistent regardless of your views. So if you get, or at least in the range that I am talking about, if you get into the range of, you know, viral videos, some of those will only have like a 3 or 4% click-through rate because there's going to be a lot of people the video gets shown to and then they don't click it, maybe because I've already seen it or something like that. But there's a lot of people who watch or who don't click on the video, but it does still get shown to them. So assuming that my click-through rate isn't being wonky just because of the way that videos are being shown to people, I would assume that if my impressions went back up, my views would actually be really, really high. Like, really high for what my channel should be. Or at least what it has been. Because how have my views actually been over the past little bit? So the last video I had that did well was Vim is the best text editor. And that is at 2,500 views right now, which is pretty normal for my channel. That's a pretty acceptable amount. Now, none of my videos are doing so badly that they're, you know, I don't know, being way under my general views. They're sort of like sitting averagely in the middle. They're usually sitting like in the dead center of my my general analytics, which is the part that's weird. So it's because I'm getting the lower impressions, it's making it less likely for a video to break out, if that makes sense. So a breakout is basically, if you know how YouTube, or how, it's not just on YouTube actually, it's how typically views end up dispersing normally. We'll find something. So, what's a good one that'll work? This one? That'll work, maybe? If we go analytics. Yeah, okay, that's a perfectly fine one. So, the way that views typically break down is you'll have this logarithmic curve. So, basically, you get most of your views right at the start. This is why I'm thinking of moving it back into the period where it's like most of my viewers are actually watching stuff, because if most of the views are happening right here, you kind of want this to be in the period where you're getting the most views. So because I'm putting this at the later, or the later edge of my view curve, that's very possible that's actually affecting what the views are. But as you can see, as the day goes on, we get this logarithmic curve that ends up appearing. This is pretty consistent on every channel. Really, the only channels that don't get this are the channels that upload crazy viral videos, and then other videos get like a couple thousand views. So you'll have someone who uploads a 1 million view video, and then another video that they upload is like 10,000 views. So those are pretty much the only channels where they don't have this logarithmic curve. But you can look at 100 sub channels, 10,000 sub channels, 100,000 sub channels, million sub channels. If you go find a video where they talk about their metrics, basically they're all going to show you pretty much the same thing. Now the numbers are going to differ, and the sharpness of the actual curve itself is going to differ, but you will pretty much see the same thing. Like most of them typically will hit most of their views within the first day, and at least half of them will happen in like the first 6 to 12 hours. Mine typically ends up being a bit later, at least lately. Like, as you can see, we have the big peak at the start, and then it's sort of like if you take a subsection of this graph, you get like a little bit of a linear growth here. But if you look at the entire thing, it is logarithmic. But some people, it's a much sharper graph where you have like it'll be, you know, up really high and then like this. So it's sort of like more like a right angle. That's usually the true ranges it's in. It's usually a really smooth logarithmic curve where you have most of your views hit by the end of the first day, but they're pretty evenly spread out after the first like 3 or so hours. Or you have the really sharp like right turn where they'll get like a big spike at the start, but then for whatever reason it doesn't get picked up outside of their like regular viewers, which is weird when that happens. I think that's more of an anomaly than the way that trending is supposed to work. If you get that really hard angle, it's supposed to push you out into bigger groups. But sometimes there can be weird videos where they've got a lot of appeal in like a couple of spheres outside, but then once you hit the next one, it just dies. That can happen from time to time. It's not likely, and if your general trend looks like that, it's a little bit weird for a channel. Usually, if that's going to happen, it'll usually happen across maybe 1 or so videos. At least from my research. Once again, this is from my personal experience and from the research that I've seen out there. So I could be wrong on some things. This is the thing with YouTube, because it's all behind closed doors. A lot of it is sort of it's sort of like how you do black box hacking, where not black hat hacking, black box hacking, very different thing. Black hat is like, you know, hacking for being evil. Hacking for hacking for evil purposes. Black box hacking is where you don't know the internals of the actual system, but you are trying to push input in it, look at the output, and then trying to infer the internals. That's kind of the position that every creator is in with YouTube and with a lot of other platforms as well. It's different with, say, like Library, because the actual algorithm is publicly known. It's very abusable, but it's publicly known. YouTube, it's sort of like experiment with it until it works, find something that works, and then hopefully that keeps working. And that's how I've been going so far. I put a bit less effort into it back in the past, but I've been trying to, you know, take it a bit more seriously recently. I've talked about Devin Nash in the past. Really recommend his stuff. He does mainly focus on streamer stuff, but most of the stuff that he says ends up being... Oh, he also talks about general video making because he does think that making videos is a good way to actually get yourself into a position where you actually can make good streams. Because if you can't hold someone's interest for 15 minutes, there's no way that you're going to be able to do that for an hour, 2 hours, so on and so forth. Yeah. So making regular content, making video on demand content is a good way to get yourself used to that, and structuring your streams in a way that you actually can, you know, pull that content out is a way to actually make it so even if you are like a streamer who does 8 to 10 hours a day, which is stupid time, I don't know why anyone does that much, but if you are someone who's like that and you structure your streams in a way that there are segments that you can pull out to actually make into separate videos, you end up making it much easier for yourself. Or you make it much easier for yourself, you make good content for people, and you also make video on demand content. So you hit 3 points with just one little bit of actually planning. Yeah. I think I've talked a little bit about what I'm planning to do with streams in the past, but yeah, do I have anything to say about that? Not much, really. Well, I'm going to be doing the segment thing, so what I'm thinking of doing right now, in the coming weeks, I might start streaming. I don't know. I'm not going to do like game streams because then I'll end up playing too many games. I might save that for a bit, but I'm thinking of doing YouTube streams, maybe like once a week, once a fortnight on Saturday or something like that. Just so I can get myself used to streaming, because it will be a little bit different from just my regular sort of content. It'll be a bit different from this. Because, one, I'm not going to swear on the main channel because I like my money on the main channel. This channel, don't give a fuck because I don't make anything on YouTube anyway. All of my money for this channel comes from Library. So I don't actually care about this one. Maybe one day I'll have a sponsor, but for now, I don't. All my money for this channel comes from Library. It's not much, but it's more than YouTube would ever pay me right now. Because, you know, 150 subs, YouTube, not going to pay me. Anyway, not the point. Not the point. The point was that I do want to... I do have a bit of time, and I do want to start streaming. The thing that I was saying was a bit different from doing this, is that there's the chat there. The chat is what changes it, because then you actually have people interacting with you as you're actually trying to roll the conversation, which does make it a bit easier, I would say. Because when I'm doing stuff by myself, I've said this before, it's very difficult sometimes to actually keep the conversation going because you don't have anyone to bounce off. But even having the chat there, like it's not obviously having someone talking to you, but it's still better than having literally nothing there. Obviously, it would probably be easiest to have someone actually in a call, but honestly, I feel like sometimes it's easier just to... It might... Oh, sorry. It might just be easier to just have the chat there scrolling by and then bouncing off of that. I don't know. Because depending on who I'm talking to, it might be a bit harder to bounce off, because the other problem with having a second person there is then you're actually having a conversation with someone, so you need to actually acknowledge that they need to be able to keep up with what you're saying as well, and that's a bit different when you have the stream. or when you have the chat, because if you're going to say garbage and the chat's not going to understand you, well, it's just the chat not understanding you. That's a bit different than the person you're directly talking to not understanding you. Obviously, you want your chat to keep up with what you're saying, because otherwise they won't keep watching the video. But it's a bit of a different point. If you have someone who's in a call with you and they're just sitting there being bored, that's gonna translate into kind of boring content when they end up talking. If that makes any sense. I hope that makes sense. Basically, I'm saying that if you have a guest on a show, you kind of have to make sure that you're keeping the guest entertained as well as the chat. Even though the guest is also helping you entertain the chat, it's still sort of like a double thing that you have to worry about. That's kind of how I feel with the podcast. Depending on who I have on the podcast, I can very easily hold a conversation. Some people it's a bit harder. Depending on how much I know the person and how good they actually are at talking on camera. Jesus Christ, I'm bad at this. 24 episodes, still can't talk. For example, when I bring someone like Connor on the show, I've known Connor for 4 years now. We can just ramble about nothing for hours. Like, that's not a big deal. Or someone who I don't know for very long, but is really good at talking, someone like Scott C. Business. If I didn't cut in at points in that podcast, he would have just done an hour video and I just would be sitting here. Like, there's no reason why I needed to talk in that podcast. Basically, I was just pushing him in a certain direction. That's the only reason I was there. And then even then, he would still divert into other directions about things he wanted to talk about. I was like, oh, do you want to talk about this random tokens? Like, sure, okay, whatever. You're directing the podcast at this point. You can do whatever you want. You've spoken about most of it. This is the only moment I'm recording in the afternoon. Not getting much sleep, being tired. I don't know how terrible that just sounded on the microphone. But, as I was saying, I don't have to worry about the chat because the chat's not directly there. But I still worry about actually making an interesting show and making sure that I'm actually maintaining my interest in what's going on, so you guys keep maintaining your interest in what's going on, rather than just me sort of just like sitting here being like, oh yeah, here's the next topic, here's the next topic, here's the next topic. Like, that wouldn't be something fun to watch. So I try to make it interesting. I don't know how well I succeed most of the time. Yeah, basically, whatever works, I guess. If no one tells me that I'm doing anything wrong with the podcast, I'm just going to keep going as I go, because this is sort of just my my time to ramble about nothing. Like, the main channels where I'm trying to be informative and making sure people are learning something, this is just me basically shooting the shit. And that's what's going to happen when I start game streaming as well. Same, the main channel streams, I'm thinking of having them be a little bit more planned. Like, maybe I'm going to do a Q&A today, or maybe I'm going to do, here's this other thing I'm going to do today. Maybe I might steal DT's idea and do a community game night as well, play some open source games. Don't know. Might do that, I don't know. Now, speaking of DT, actually, I actually hadn't planned to talk about this, but I did notice that he did something that is actually pretty cool. So where is it? Where is it? DistroTube. Here we go. Now, don't play the audio. Is this a stream? What is this? So, DT has a podcast, I guess. I don't know if I didn't listen to it. It might just be like a news show sort of podcast. I don't exactly know what his deal what his deal with it is, but it looks kind of cool, and I will be definitely checking it out maybe tomorrow or something. But it seems to be sort of like a structured in the same sort of way that you would have, you know, a lot of other news shows be structured. I think he might have done something like this in the past. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else, but I definitely do recall this layout. It is probably a pretty normal thing for like a news show anyway, so I might be thinking of someone else who has done it. But hey, more people should do podcasts, because podcasts are nice and cool. Yeah. Speaking of DT, another thing on him, I noticed that on my Twitter, I actually got a bunch of notifications from DT, and I don't understand why. I think he might have just logged onto his account for the first time in a couple of months, because we go down a bit. Let's find it. Where is the notifications from DT? Here we go. So over on Twitter, we have this. That's Naomi Brockwell. We have this wall of notifications from DT. So DistroTube follow you. DistroTube liked the tweet from June 24th. Liked the tweet from June 24th. Liked the tweet from March 26th. Liked the tweet from January 10th. So I feel like he hasn't logged onto his Twitter account since at least January 10th. Not a bad thing. Mastodon is a much better platform. I would highly recommend you using Mastodon if you want Twitter, but you don't want as much garbage. It's still a lot of garbage because it is still like a microblogging platform, but it's a bit less than what we otherwise would have had on Twitter. Partially because there's less people there. That's one of the big things, but also partially because it's a little bit more confusing to actually get yourself an account, because I don't think you can make an account on mastodon.social anymore. You have to go to like mstdn.social if you want the main instance. But then there's also other instances where you can be like, oh, I want to be on tech.xyz or linux.org.eu or something. Linux.org.eu. I'm sure that one doesn't exist. But because there's not just one like centralized website, it's a little bit harder to work out even how to join Mastodon, which does typically eliminate some of the really boring people. Obviously, you're still going to get a lot of the internet culture people who are way more annoying, but I haven't noticed as many people. I think just because the platform's much smaller, so it's a little bit more boring for them to stick around and actually bother trolling you. Whereas on Twitter and YouTube, there are lots of people there who, who just sit around every day being like, I'm going to troll this person today for no reason. Or I'm going to do this other thing. Or I'm going to be a really annoying person. I like to mess with the really annoying people on YouTube. It's always fun. Typically, if they post something really dumb, I will go and post it on Twitter. Which is good, because on Twitter, Mastodon, most of the people who follow me are, fans of the content. I don't think I have any hate followers, at least at this stage. On YouTube, I definitely have hate followers. So when I go and post something on Twitter that someone said that was really dumb, and it goes to Mastodon as well, Mastodon usually has a bit more interaction. Usually people are like, this person's a moron. Because it'll be something dumb like, your beard is bad or something. Like, yeah, I've heard that from 30 other people. Thank you. Try something, maybe a bit more creative. When they do get creative though, then it ends up getting worse, because then they end up making stuff up. But my favorite one recently has been people who say that things about the way I make my content is just inherently bad. It's like, oh, you don't need notes to do this. Oh, this or this other thing about your content. Like, it's one thing to give me critical, like actual, I guess, a critical review of what I'm doing, or being critical of what I'm doing in general. But the way they phrase it is typically as, hey, I'm trying to bring your day down. So for those people, I usually be like, hey, the stage is open. Feel free to make some content. And you know what happens every single time? They don't respond. And you know what exists on their channel every single time? Not a single video. There is not a single person who ever actually makes content who says something like that on YouTube, where it's just like, oh, you don't need this to make content, or your content's bad because you have notes or something. Like, anyone who actually makes content knows that that is the dumbest thing you could ever say. Not that specifically. Complaining about the way that someone makes content without offering some sort of reason, like even like unreasonable suggestion, like, oh, you should get a teleprompter or something, or you should just like prepare all your videos from scratch. Like, when I actually talk to creators and they talk about the different ways they make content, that's like one thing where they're like, oh, I don't use notes, I do this. But most creators I've noticed tend to be pretty friendly. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions, but this might just be a with people being friendly, this might just be a thing of the Linux sphere, where because there's not that many people, the people who end up standing out are the ones, like, typically end up being fairly likable people. Which might explain why my channel's not that big, but there's a couple of people who seem to think I'm likable, otherwise they wouldn't give me money on Patreon. But what I was saying was that the people who are typically the faces of the Linux sphere are all pretty nice. Like, all of the ones that I've talked to have all been pretty chill. Even the people who a lot of my supporters don't particularly like. Like, I know a lot of people who don't particularly like Chris Titus, for example, or don't like Lunduke. But from the minimal interaction that I had with both of them, they both seem to be pretty nice people. I don't know of anyone in the Linux sphere who's kind of an asshole. I can't think of anyone who's like that. Obviously, there are just general viewers, but a lot, as I was saying, those are the sort of people who will complain about the way you make stuff and will have not ever made anything for themselves. They just like to bring people down rather than build something up themselves. They don't realize. I think they realize how difficult it is to build something and decide it's easier to tear people down rather than trying to, build up something, even if it doesn't get anywhere, trying to build up something that they can say, this is mine, this is the mark that I have left on the world. Rather, they would say, okay, the mark I'm going to leave on the world is I made this person's day bad once. Here's the thing, once you start thinking of the just general trolls on YouTube as these like really sad people who just don't have anything going for them in their lives, it makes it you end up starting to feel sorry for the people who post mean comments for you, which is weird. And if you don't think like this, you probably don't understand what I'm saying. But if you think of the people who are just always mean and not critical, or just always trying to tear you down, if you think of those people as just really sad people who just have nothing going for them in their lives, you end up just feeling really sad for them. But you can only feel so sad for them because once you realize that they are just sad people, then you just realize they're sad people who have no interest in helping themselves. And if someone doesn't have any interest in helping themselves, there's not really much you can do to help them, make anything of themselves. They're not people who want to help themselves, so any amount of effort that you put into helping them is kind of going to be wasted. And you're better off putting that effort into yourself, or if you do want to help people, putting that effort into people who actually want to improve themselves. Those are the people who you should be spending effort on. And this is true outside of like online spaces as well. It's true for people in just your regular life. If, say, you're at university and you know someone who's always asking for assignment help, who never puts in any effort for themselves, barely passes everything. Obviously, it's different if they're barely passing and you know that they're putting in tons of work. That's obviously different. But if they're the sort of person who just tries to skate by on the bare minimum and is always asking for help, those are not the sort of people you should spend your effort on helping. If maybe you know someone who's like, hey, I am really struggling with this. I've tried all of these different things. I've tried all of these resources. And then they still can't work it out. That's different. And those are the people I like to... Those are the sort of people that I help. I hope that I'm helping with this channel. The people who, have tried to fix something on their system or have tried to look for some piece of software and they just couldn't find it. And then they stumble across this video and it's like, hey, here's how you do that. You don't need to keep looking now. Those are people I really like helping. Obviously, there are going to be people who still ask for more, even regardless of how much you actually put effort in, even they will still keep asking for more and more. And those are those sort of people who aren't really going to help themselves. But I would hope that most people don't fall in that category. And most people I've met typically want to help themselves improve. And once they want to help themselves improve, you can, help them along. And I know for some people it's really not good to see or to see or say that someone is kind of a lost cause, but there's only so much time in the day and you can't dedicate yourself to everyone who has no interest in improving their lives. You sort of have to move on with your own life, and I guess, work on the people that you know that you can actually get somewhere with. That's sort of my main point there. So that was a relatively serious topic for this podcast, which is fairly rare. Let's move to something a bit happier. So I got invited to a Vim conference. Now, I say invited because I don't know what in the world is happening to it right now. I'll see if I can find the website for it. Here's the website. So this is supposedly the podcast I got invited to. So vimconf.live. So I don't know who any of these people are. So the website is broken when I have it in this size. Streamer and Vim Event. I actually have no idea who any of these people are. But anyway, this person sent me the email. I presume they were the organizer. They sent me the email. They're like, hey, do you want to come on to the conference? I was like, sorry, I actually can't because, like, this time doesn't work. IDT is like, I think Iranian daylight time or something. I don't know. It's in a weird time zone that would have put it at like 2 a.m. for me. Now, I said to this person, hey, I would be interested in coming onto the conference, but the time's a bit weird. And he's like, oh yeah, well, the time's sort of like a placeholder. So it might change by the time of the event. I was like, okay, well, if it changes, I'm happy to do it. And then I didn't get a response back. So I'm not doing the Vim conference now. I would be entirely happy to do it. I don't know why I would get invited to it. Because, yeah, I've done like 30 Vim videos, but I don't feel like I'm that good at Vim. I feel like I'm pretty bad at it. So, yeah. I don't know why anyone would take my opinion on Vim. I do Vim plugin videos. I don't know how to use Vim. Yeah. Every time I do a video on Vim, someone tells me that I'm doing something the wrong way, and I think I'm slowly getting people to the point where they are accepting that there's no right way to do stuff in Vim, because I've been getting less of those comments recently. Early on when I did stuff in Vim, there would always be someone be like, oh, you're doing this wrong with Vim, or this wrong with Vim, or this wrong. But there seems to be less of those people at this point. Maybe they've left. Maybe they have stopped saying stupid things. Oh, I apologize for the yawning, but it's not going to stop until the end of the podcast. So, yeah, I use Vim. I guess I could talk about it, but I don't know whether I'd be able to do it like a talk at a conference, but I don't know. Apparently there's 809 people who are going to be attending this this conference. It's going to be a online Zoom thing, I guess. But yeah, so if you want to hit me back up and ask me again, or respond to my email where I said that I can do it, hit me up. Otherwise, I won't do it. Basically, still probably won't unless they mess with the time, because most of their people are going to be in the US, and this is apparently a good time for people in the US. I think that would put it around like 5 or 6 p.m. in like California or something, where most people in the show are actually located. So obviously you couldn't really change it too much, but for me, if it's going to be at 2 a.m, I obviously cannot do that. I think it went from like midnight to 2, which if I was living my own place, maybe I would. If I was doing this full time, maybe I would, but otherwise it's not really that viable for me. Yeah. What else do we have? So I have been using Unity a lot. Now, Unity as in the Unity game engine, not Unity as in the desktop environment. So I've talked about how much I despise Unity in the past, but you know what? Maybe it's not terrible. Maybe there are some really cool things about it. Maybe there are some things that are really dumb about it. So one of the dumb things is, did you know that by default, if you get a spotlight in Unity, the default action of the spotlight is to phase through walls? Now, if I was making a lighting system, my default action for any light would not be phased through the wall. That should not be the default action for any lighting system. Why would it be? Typically, you want, shadows. So even when you go and turn the shadows on, it still phases through the wall, because what shadows actually do is basically modifies the amount of light seep that happens between each wall. So if you have, say, 2 walls, and you have a torch going through the first wall here, light going through this wall. Now, once it goes through this wall, the shadow it casts on this wall is going to be determined by your shadow level. So if you have your shadow level at like 0.1, it'll be really bright on this wall. But if it's at like 0.5, it'll be half as bright. So the way you actually go and disable the actual lighting penetrating through the walls is you raise it all the way up to 1. Now, this makes sense afterwards, but while you're trying to set it up, it does not make any sense at all. Like, why? Firstly, why is the light set up to phase through walls to begin with? Why is the default settings not shadows on, 100% shadow, don't phase through walls? That should be the default settings, but it's not. The default settings is 100% light going through the walls. Walls don't exist. And I thought this might have been like a collider problem, but then I realized there's no reason why the collider would have anything to do with light, especially with like a game engine like this. Unity is supposed to do this for you, but turns out it was this weird spotlight problem. I also noticed I had a weird collider problem with something else. I had assumed, because some of my 3D models did end up having colliders automatically chucked on them, that I had assumed that all of them did. No, not all of them. Some of them. Some of them didn't. Some of them actually had no collider whatsoever. So what would happen is I would put a thing on the thing, turn the game on, woo, infinite speed. So I fixed that by chucking mesh colliders on them, which that addressed it. Because I thought that it was just some weird other problem. Like I looked at it, I was like, why is this not, why? There's like a collider on the thing that I don't want to move, but I don't have I thought for some reason that a collider on the thing that I didn't want to move would be fine, but I didn't have the collider that it was colliding with, so the collider couldn't collide with anything, so it just, and the problem then you have is once something is moving that quickly, you can't actually put it back on the game stage, because the way that, okay, here's a bit of game dev for you. So typically the way that collisions work is every single frame you will check whether the colliders are interacting with each other. Now there are better ways to do this that end up, saving some CPU cycles, but let's just say that we're going to check every single collider in the scene every single time. So here is a phone. We're going to say that this is a wall, and this comb is going to be a bullet. Now, optimally, what you would have happen is when the comb bullet is colliding with the wall. So this is a really bad thing to pick. I'll pick something that this is white. So when the comb is colliding with this, then this is the frame that you're going to be checking the collision on, or maybe at some point while the comb is like going through the object. This is the point where you want to be checking collision. Now, what happens if between frame 1 and frame 2, the object passes all the way through the object? This is where you can start seeing some weird problems where your collisions are just not working. Now, the collisions are still being checked, but if the collider is perfectly mapped to this object, and the object has already moved past the wall, what happens is the collision checks, the collision fails, and the object keeps going. And the reason why this happens is because the object is moving too quickly. So I believe the concept is called penetration, which is a pretty sensible name for it. So you have basically object penetration. So if the object is going too fast and ends up passing through the wall, it's not going to stop because there's nothing else that it could actually collide with. Obviously, if there's extra walls, it could collide with other walls outside of that. But assuming this is the game boundary wall, it's just going to keep going forever, which could be a problem, could be not a problem. If it's like a few objects that seep out, It's technically not a major problem. It's still something you shouldn't be doing, because eventually, if more and more objects do keep leaking out, it could eventually cause a problem. But if it's like maybe 3 or 4, it's fine. But say you were setting up an FPS, for example, and you were actually modeling the bullets, and the bullets would collide through the wall. Eventually, you would have so many bullets in the game world that you would have... It's not a memory leak, per se, but it would feel like a memory leak, because it's... The more you play the game, the more memory is being used and not being cleaned up. So it's technically not a memory leak, but it behaves in the same way. So there's a couple of ways you can address this. One of the ways that's fairly common is, say you have the object at this point here, and then at the next frame the object is at this point here. What you will sometimes do is actually draw a line between those 2 points, and then check the colliders along the points. So every single time there is every single point along the line where the collider is basically touching new space, you would test the collider in that point. Now, this is a very, very expensive process, because basically that means you have to double or triple your collision checks, which means you kind of have to be using some of the heuristics to actually reduce the number of collisions you're doing, because in most games, that's basically just going to mean that your game just doesn't work at that point, because you have so many collisions you have to check. And the problem with games is that you have to do all of the things in your update loop every single frame. So if you have 1,000 checks you have to do once every 30th of a second or every 60th of a second, obviously that's going to be a really, really big problem. So the whole point I was getting at there was, once something actually collides through the world in Unity, because Unity goes and it's a 3D engine. So once that thing collides through the object, it's going to pick up speed. And the thing I had attached to it was, I had a rigid body attached to it. Now, if you don't know what a rigid body is, basically it's a thing that adds gravity onto objects. So once something starts falling, it's going to fall, and it's going to fall, and it's going to fall, and fall, and fall, and fall, and eventually it's going to hit its terminal velocity, which I'm not sure how fast in Unity actually is, but once you hit that terminal velocity, then it cannot be stopped, because basically the distance it's going to travel in that point is going to be too far for the collider to actually work, and it's just not even going to touch the collider. Now, the thing is that sometimes it might. That's where it gets really weird. So, this is why collision problems are actually really difficult to actually check. So, say you're firing a bullet, and the bullet goes really quickly through the wall. So, you fire it, it's at this point. The wall is here, you fire it. Okay. Goes all the way through. Right. You fire a second bullet, goes all the way through. You fire the third bullet, this one actually does hit the wall. This is why the collision checks are really difficult to actually determine, because depending on how far away you actually are from the thing you're trying to collide with, and also depending on the actual frame rate of the game. If the frame rate is higher, there will be more collision checks. If the frame rate is lower, there will be less collision checks. Now, this is why you don't tie physics engines to your frame rate, but that's a whole nother topic, and I might talk about that in just a moment. But collision problems are very difficult to actually determine, because they're sort of like threading problems, where sometimes they will be a problem, sometimes they won't be a problem. So they only really show themselves if you do a lot of testing. Now, if it's a really bad collision problem where like the thing travels 10 times its length every single frame, obviously that's going to be noticeable pretty quickly, because everything is going to pass through the wall, except for the really rare ones. But if it's only like a slight speed improvement or slight speed boost, it might only let like a couple through. And one of the things I had that was doing this was I had a key sitting on a table, and I didn't have I had a collider on the floor, but not on the table. Now, the table was like, let's just say this thick. Now, the floor was like maybe this thick or something like that. So, basically, I'm showing like a couple centimeters, like 1 centimeter or half centimeter, whatever. basically it's something that's thick, something that's thinner. So it fell through the table and it picked up enough velocity that by the time it got to the floor, even though the floor had a collider on it, because it was going so fast, it ended up actually passing through the collider before actually checking that it was actually touching that collider, because between the two frames, it moved so far that it didn't actually check, or it checked, it didn't actually pass the collision check. Now, this is because by default, Unity's collision checking is fairly rudimentary. It's pretty much what I'm saying, where you just check everything in the scene. If they're touching, then they're colliding. If they're not colliding. And obviously, you only do it with things that actually have colliders attached to them. You won't try to check it on every single game object, because then you'll be checking, you know, the lighting against the floor or something like that. And the lighting is handled differently than the differently from the collision engine, but it's still a game object in the scene. So if you were like checking things like that, it wouldn't make any sense. But anything that has a collider attached to it, those are going to be checked when Unity does that. Now, you can go and write other sort of collision systems for Unity. They're all fairly well documented online on how to do various sorts of collisions. I did a mobile game development course, and I should remember what some of them are called, but I don't, because I don't care, because I'm not a game developer. I do enjoy game dev, though. As you can probably tell, it's not something I would ever want to do as like a career at a company, unless it was my company. If I started doing indie game dev, and then I built a company around me, I would be fine with that. I would not be fine with going and getting a job at Blizzard, for example, because do you know how bad Blizzard is? So, I don't know if you've heard about this. I'll see if I can find it. So, I'm not going to say it out loud because I kind of want to show you it as I see it. So, Blizzard. That one. This is probably great content. Is this it? Here we go. Yes. So, employees at Blizzard, maker of World of Warcraft and Overwatch, were reportedly paid so little they were forced to skip meals to pay rent, while the CEO made $40 million. And apparently the year before, he made $30 million. So, while some of the devs were making so little money that they basically couldn't pay their rent, he gave himself a $10 million raise. So, some employees at Blizzard, the studio responsible for hits, okay, we know what Blizzard makes, said they were paid so poorly that they used the free office coffee as an appetite suppressant, skipped meals in the employee cafeteria, and in one case chose not to have kids due to an inability to afford them. Now, Blizzard, what are you doing? Firstly, why does your office not have snacks in it? That's one thing. Why is the only snack in your office that's free coffee? What sort of modern tech company are you that doesn't give people, you know, fucking free? I don't know. You think of something like Snapchat. Go look at what Snapchat gives to their employees and how much money Snapchat does. Actually, yeah, Snapchat would make millions of dollars selling your data. But go look at what they give their employees for free. Blizzard is just like, no, you get free coffee and we don't pay you enough to afford to have kids or to afford your rent. So now, if you go look at their salaries, it's not referring to the developers. Developers at Blizzard, at least the higher end ones, typically make a lot of money. Now, it's a lot of money outside of a Californian context. Now, these people live in California, so everything's expensive there, where like an 80 grand salary would be basically struggling to live. Which is stupid. I don't understand how a place can be that expensive. I don't understand why you'd ever want to live somewhere like Silicon Valley or just California in general. It sounds way too expensive there, and I don't really see what you'd get out of it. Especially now that a lot of companies are just happily shifting over to doing stuff remotely because they were forced to. But also, a lot of companies are just realizing that it might actually be cheaper. So they might as well just do it online because they might as well. Now, along with that, they also go and then install tracking software on all of their employees' computers. So that part's not good, but the other part where they're, you know, working from home and saving money, that part's okay. Yeah, I would never, honestly, like, if I go down the dev route still, I would never want to live in a big city. As close as I would be happy to get to a big city is somewhere like Mawson Lakes, probably, or whatever an equivalent in somewhere like, you know, Melbourne or something like that is. So this is Mawson Lakes, also known as a swamp. It used to be a swamp, at least. Now it's a area for rich people. It's, yeah. That is, why is your finger over the camera? Anyway, this is that's Dry Creek. Okay, yeah, that's a bit more representative. Yeah, this is about as city as I would get, because it's still kind of got like that fake nature thing going on where you can go for like walks around places. But if you go all the way into like Adelaide, it's nothing obviously as ridiculous as some US cities, but it's still so much worse than I would ever want to deal with. Like when I was a kid, I sort of thought I would love to live the city life, and then I've been to the city a couple of times and was like, no, I don't. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, I want a slower life. Like, look at this. Look how many people are going to be here. Like, this is dumb. Too many. Like, it looks pretty empty here. If you go look at some, like, okay, the thing about Australia is there's not many people here. So even our big cities are fairly tiny. But what is going on with this hair? But it's still more than I would like to deal with. I would much rather prefer, you know, go live somewhere like, let's find somewhere that I might want to live. Let's Berry. Yeah, we'll look at Berry. This is probably great for the audio listeners, not that one. Berry, Australia, not Berry as in Berry the chipmunk from Conker's Bad Fur Day. Yeah, here we go. Like, look at this. This looks so much nicer. Nice and quiet. Down by the river. Houseboats. It's still a town. Not much of a town. Actually, Berry's a fairly large town, to be honest. That was probably a bad example. Let's find something else. Let's go with Waikerie. There we go. I've shown Waikerie a few times on the show because it's a nice place. On the river. Very small town. Don't know how many people live there. Probably not many. You know what, we're gonna find out. How many? Let's go back to. Let's go to Wikipedia. How many people live in Waikerie? This is why I need a producer, so I'm not doing this, you know, on the show. Waikerie, Australia. How many people live there? 2,684 people as of the 2016 census. Wait, if the last census was in 2016, wouldn't the next one be coming up pretty soon? I think they're every 4 years. Maybe I'm wrong. It might be every 5 years or 6 years or something. Anyway, less than 3,000 people living there, which is that's lovely. That's a much quieter life, much slower life. Obviously, eventually you get used to it, and you're like, okay, well this is the life I live now. This is the speed that I'm at, and eventually your body would sort of like adjust to it, where that sort of ends up being like the speedier regular life, so it wouldn't feel any slower than the city at some point. But for the first couple of months, you'd be good. And every time I go up there, it is nice and chill. So maybe it would be a bad thing to move up there then, because then I wouldn't be able to like move away from the country to chill in the country, if that makes sense. So if I like lived out in a rural area, then I wouldn't be able to go rural to be able to move away from my regular life. I would have to like go into the city to move away from the regular life, which I don't know if that would be relaxing or not. Maybe it would be. Maybe it wouldn't be. I don't know. I haven't tried it before. It's been quite a while since I've lived in a rural area. It's probably... Well, how old am I? 22? 21. 22. Probably been like 14 years since I lived in a rural area. Back then I lived in... Have I shown this one before? I don't know. I feel like I might be saying stuff I've said in the past before, but this is what happens when I don't have a producer or a guest. Glenwood. Great place. It's going to be a picture of a tree. No, not Glenwood, New South Wales. That's a much nicer one. Glenwood, Queensland. Close. Didn't show a picture of a tree, but there are lots of trees in the pictures. All of the pictures here are of property. Okay, yeah, that also sums up pretty well. Rainbow lorikeets. There's lots of those. They're a really annoying parrot, but they are pretty. They're like, yeah. I don't think it's just the males that are rainbows. I think they're all rainbows. I'm pretty sure. I've never looked into the differences between a male and a female rainbow lorikeet, but I know with things like budgies, the prettier ones are the males, and that's typically true for most bird species. Typically, the prettier ones are the males for however that ended up happening. Anyway, most of the picture. Okay, yeah, that also sums up Glenwood pretty well. So we have fires, and we have houses and trees. That's pretty much all of Glenwood that exists. Now I know that I have scrolled through this before and found where I used to live. You know, we're gonna try that. Glenwood, Queensland, Ward Street. I don't know if I've tried it on the show before. Ah, that was quick. 314 Ward Street. Perfect. Realestate.com. Can we find pictures of the inside of the house? Is that a thing? Yes, there is. We're going to look through the pictures inside the house. So yeah, this is the place that I grew up in. I think the pictures... I haven't looked at these in a long time. So if you go like down off past this way, yeah, you can see my cursor. Down past the back of the house, there's like a big dip, basically, and it goes down to like a lake. And we also had 2 water tanks. And also under this house, there were lots of spiders that lived there as well. But this property actually, it wasn't originally here. This one came from Gympie. So we put the house on a truck and then shipped it out to Gympie, shipped it out from Gympie into the middle of nowhere in Glenwood. So let's just look through the rest. So we have a shed. Oh, right. No, that was a, I think, yeah, I do remember that. There was a chicken coop off to the side here as well. And this is just, you know, a shed. Nothing too special about this. Just backyard. Down here, there was the lake we had. Oh, I have not looked inside this house in a long time. This is going to look, very interesting. So, Jesus Christ, this house was ugly. But it's got a certain charm to it. There's a certain charm about these older country houses. Gympie itself is still pretty rural. Not as rural as Glenwood, but still pretty bad. Oh lord. I forgot the wall. Wait, were they blue when I lived there? I don't remember. I know that when we first moved in, this used to be a big wall here. But we ended up stripping out the wall so we could open up the lounge room to... I think there's a dining room on the other side here. The kitchen... Oh, the kitchen. The kitchen. I think the toilet might have been... Is that corrugated iron? I think that's corrugated iron behind the toilet. I don't remember that. Maybe it was always like that. But I think this basin was upgraded since I was living there. The shower still looks like a shower. It's a bath-shower combo thing, which is pretty common in some of the older places. A lot of them didn't have a separate shower. That's sort of a relatively new thing. Like, new, I say new, it's sort of like a thing for houses built post-90s that ended up happening. Pre-90s, a lot of the time, when they did have a shower, it was sort of like built into the bath as well. Oh lord, this is ugly. Yeah, so here's the kitchen here, and this is the, like, God, I remember this liner was ugly. I think the floors haven't been cleaned properly in a while, because those, I don't remember looking that bad. Now, I might just remember it with rose-colored glasses, but I remember the floors being pretty nice most of the time, and this place looks like it's falling apart now. So, oh yeah, okay. So, back when I was living here, we had a big deep freezer sitting right here, and right here was actually a window into my sister's room. Now, why was there a window into a room? I don't know, but there was. So, people, you could, you know, climb out of the room and just sneak off somewhere if you wanted to. Now, I don't know why it was like that, but you could. And I think this door right here, the one next to the bathroom, I think this door would have been a door into my room, if I recall correctly. I think this is a picture of the master bedroom. Jesus Christ, this is an ugly house looking back at it. These are some bad pictures. I think is there going to be a floor plan? Maybe. Is that a built-in... Wait, is that built-in wardrobe always there? It might have been. So I think that's a wardrobe there. But you can see how badly it was installed. Like, I think they might have just done this themselves. Or it might have been there when I was living there. I can't recall this. This would have been my parents' room, I reckon. Then we have another closet of some sort. I don't remember this. Maybe this is some sort of... Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Picture outside the house and back in the shed. Jesus Christ, this shed is falling apart. Do we have a floor plan? No, it doesn't look like we have a floor plan, sadly. How much is this property? It doesn't tell us either. Wait, it should tell us what it sold for. No, it doesn't. Okay. Well, we don't have information on past sales of this property. So, yeah, that was the property that I grew up in. At least, well, that I spent a lot of... It wasn't the first place that I was born. It wasn't the first place I was born. It wasn't the place I was born in. But this is where I spent... I think from when I was around 3 or 4 to when I was 8. So really, it wasn't even that long of my childhood, but it was the time that I was living in Queensland, and that time is still pretty, at least pretty vivid in my mind. I do want to eventually move back into a rural area, probably not into Glenwood, just because when Queensland floods, fire, anything else really bad, basically Glenwood kind of gets the worst of it because it's in a bowl. So if it floods, well, you're screwed. And when there's a fire, eventually the smoke will settle in the bowl, and the fires are obviously a big problem as well because you're in basically a rainforest. But besides that, also the hail is pretty bad. You'll get baseball-sized hail as well. Wait, did they still have the deck there? Back when I was... There wasn't... Wait, is that a picture of the... Yeah, that's the back. They've got rid of the deck. Wait, did they? Yeah, they did. Back when I was here, there was actually like a big deck that came out here. Now they've replaced it with just a set of stairs for some reason. I don't know why they would have done that. Maybe it wasn't... I know my dad built it himself, so it might not have been put up that well. It might have started falling apart. That's possible. That's the reason why they would have removed it, but otherwise I can't see any reason why. Yeah, I'm sad there's not a floor plan or a picture of my room, because my room, if I remember correctly, would have been... You can't really tell from like how big it is next to this one, but I think my room would have been like... So this is the wall for that room, and that's the wall for that room. I reckon that was probably like if you measured out, maybe 4 meters wide, and I think like 6 meters long, which is stupid. It was a stupidly big room. I don't know why I got given the biggest room and not... I don't even think the master bedroom was bigger. I think that room was actually the biggest room in the house. But it was also a weirdly designed house. Like, all of the other rooms was like fairly small. I think it actually might have been the biggest room in the house. It was bigger than the actual lounge room itself. Obviously, with the wall we smashed out, that ended up being bigger. But before that happened, I think my room actually would have been the biggest one in the house, which is a weird way to structure a house like that. And it's because it was also in a weird spot as well, because it's like near the back door, which is not normally a spot where you put like the master bedroom. So it wasn't intended to be the master bedroom. It was just like a secondary bedroom that was bigger than other bedrooms for some reason. Maybe it was supposed to be the master bedroom. I don't know. We don't have a floor plan. But generally you don't see master bedrooms put towards the back door. That's not really a spot you see them at. But you can see how bad the paint job was done on this house. I believe that we would have done the paint... Yeah, we would have repainted the house. So you can see how it didn't get taped off properly. And you can see... we zoom on that? No, we can't zoom anymore. You can probably make out the windows didn't get taped off. And there's just there's paint on the windows, which obviously not the best. I wonder if this place actually has good internet yet. Let's find that out. So, if we go NBN map. So if you don't know, the NBM is the National Broadband Network, which is a mess of a project where basically we were supposed to get fiber to the home, and then government swapped, and then we didn't get fiber to the home, basically. So if we go 314 Ward Street, or is it Ward Road? Ward Road, Ward Road, Queensland. Yeah, here we go. Oh wow, okay. So yeah, and as I was saying, NBN basically was a project to bring fiber to every single home in Australia. We had a government swap, and then the government that swapped in was like, hey, we're not doing that. We're now going to do fiber to the node. And what fiber to the node basically means is you have like a node on your street or a node a couple of streets away, and then you run fiber from that point to the home. Now, the problem you have here is, yes, it gets quickly to the node, but if you know anything about how networking works, basically, a network is as slow as its slowest link. And if you have half of the link being copper, well, the link's going to be pretty slow. Now, it's better than it was because the copper we had before wasn't being utilized properly. We were getting like 5 down pre-NBN. Now the place I'm at has 50 down, and we could pay more to get like 100 down. And some places you can get like a gigabit. Now I don't know how much a gigabit is, and I think you need a business connection for that, which is stupidly expensive. But you can get a gigabit. So so you have those government swaps, and then yeah. Basically, we've now in a position where we've realized, oh shit, we should have probably done fiber to the home, shouldn't we? And when they eventually decide to do that, now what we're going to have to do is run more fiber. And you would think that, oh, it'd be like the same cost, the same cost to equal out then. No, it's not how that works, because you then have to recontract people, and those contracts are going to cost, more money to start up the contract, because there's going to be contract fees as well. So overall, the project is going to cost more than it would have originally if we had just done fiber to the home from the start. But the reason why they don't care is because they won't be in power by the time that it happens, because they would have retired by then, because it won't be until like 20 or 30 years from now that we actually have fiber to the home. So maybe one day we'll get gigabit as just like a regular thing to the home, but not anytime soon. It will happen in my lifetime, just not anytime soon. Anyway, being a country property, this place actually has NBM satellite, which is, satellite internet, which it works. I've used satellite internet before. It's actually gotten really good. It's unusable for games, completely unusable, and also satellite internet is basically the only sort of internet we have that ends up getting data caps. So usually in Australia, I know this might sound weird to people in America, data caps are not really a thing here, at least for landline connections. Obviously, if you're talking about like your phone data plan, that's different. But if we go have a look at Internode, for example, what are we looking at here? Wait, have they gotten rid of one of their projects? Oh, no. So if we look at this, so they've got a special offer where, Jesus Christ, it's gone up in price again. $70 a month will get you 25 down, which is stupid. The only one where you actually get a data cap is the cheapest plan, which is $50 a month for NBN 12, which is 12 down, basic, typical speeds, roughly 11. They actually have to put this in now because there was a lot of people early on who were paying for like 50 down and were getting way less than that. So now they have to say, this is what you will typically see. Sometimes it does get lower than this, but it's usually in that range. This is the only package I've ever seen for a NBN landline connection that actually has a data cap. Usually after like the base package, there's no data caps anymore. So as you can see, go up the tier. The highest one is 100 down, which is not even remotely close to 100 down. It's actually 78 down, which is part of the having the copper in the line. If the copper wasn't there, it wouldn't exactly be that sort of problem. Now, can I find satellite internet, NBN, NBN wireless. I think NBN wireless would be satellite. This one you'll typically see there's no data cap. All right then. I'm actually surprised with that. Usually there's a data cap on the wireless one. I guess they might have changed that. Maybe they've changed it because of COVID. I don't know. So what about NBN fiber? Is that what they're calling? Yeah, okay, that's the package for. Yeah, they've got fiber to the node, fiber to the curb, and fiber to the B. Fiber to the B. I don't know what that is. Fiber to the what? What is fiber? What is FTTB? NBN FTTB. Oh, fiber to the building. So that's if you're like a office building or something like that. Anyway, yeah, as you can see, they bundle. This is how bad of a rollout it is. So they bundle fiber to the node. So fiber to maybe up to 1 kilometer away, fiber to the house, and fiber to the building in the same thing, and they all get the same packages. So if you have fiber to the fiber to the curb, which is basically fiber to your property, you get the same speeds as fiber to the node. Obviously, the minimum speeds are probably going to be better, but it's not like you get, oh, I have fiber to the house, I can pay for a gigabit. No, that's not a thing that happens. If you have fiber to the curb, you get the same thing that someone who just has fiber to the node actually gets, which is dumb. If I have fiber to my house, I should be able to get a regular plan that isn't a business plan where I get 500 megabit, a gigabit. Otherwise, why did you run fiber to the house? There's no reason to do so otherwise. If I just have fiber to the curb and I'm getting 100 down, oh sorry, fiber to the node, I'm just getting 100 down. I don't like that, but at least it makes sense. But if I have literally fiber running to my doorstep, why can I not just pay for a gigabit? Why is that not something I can do? Now, I think if you go in the business class, you can get some, yeah, let's go business NBN and see what you can get. Does it even tell me prices? No, you can't, okay. Without calling them up, you can't even get, wait, what do you even get extra then? It's the same package, it just costs more. Is it just less likely to go down? Is that what it is? I have no idea. Okay, let's go business, internet, fiber. Okay, so to actually work this out, you have to go and learn more about fiber hardware. If you want to find more about it, you have to call their sales team. Of course you do. So yeah, that's just hardware they have up to 100 megabit. I guarantee these work for more than 100 megabit. Otherwise, they would be modems for 7 years ago. This is dumb. You know that you can offer gigabit, you just do not want to do that. And the reason why they don't want to do it is because the NBN is a government scheme. So this data network is basically being controlled by the government. It's not like all of these individual providers. I'm talking about Internode here, but it's not like I'm ragging on Internode. Internode is doing what basically the NBN tells them to do, because this is a nationalized broadband network. And obviously, because it's a nationalized broadband network, everyone's basically gonna, have to deal with the same stuff. It's not like, oh, Internode, we're gonna run our own fiber and do whatever we want. Oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. Now, obviously, we get the benefit of having this, at least having fiber to the node. That's at least better than some places in the US get. Some places in the US are still on dial-up. That's not a thing here. Everyone in Australia can get at least 10 down. That's entirely fine. You can at least get 10 down with satellite internet. But the benefit of having that system where people can be competitive is that you can have things like Google Fiber pop up, or you can have things like, I think Verizon used to do something really good. Obviously, that was back when 100 down was good. I don't think they're doing anything good now. But you had Google Fiber in the past, and then you have little towns in Canada and stuff where they run their own fiber and oh, we're gonna get 10 gigabit everywhere. But that's not a thing here, because we have this nationalized network where everyone sort of just has to work with whatever the government says is the maximum allowed speed they're allowed to give. I don't particularly like the way the NBN's rolled out. I would like it I would like to have it have been privatized rather than be a government scheme like this. Because it can't get much worse than it already is. We're already still one of the we already still have one of the slowest internet speeds in the world. It's not as bad as it used to be. It's not like we're slower than Kazakhstan anymore, but it's still pretty bad. So I don't expect to get better anytime soon. Maybe in 10, 15, 20 years, but not at least anytime soon. Now, I just realized we're going on 2 hours soon, and I actually have to go cook some food and go to work. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up pretty soon, actually. So yeah, I think this has actually been a fun episode. I actually didn't hit on even most of the topics I have, so we'll just go over some of the topics I actually still have. I'll probably save them for another episode, but I'll say what I actually had on the list. So I was going to talk a bit more about Unity. I was going to talk about Unity Pro Builder. Now, Unity Pro Builder is basically a way to do 3D modeling inside of Unity. It's not great, but it works. I do want to save that for a bigger episode because I think it is a lot of fun to play with. I was also going to talk about the library sync problem, which has now been fixed. And it's actually gotten way better. Like, I don't know what happened. Library sync is now really good. My videos are synced before I get out of bed, which wasn't a thing before. Usually they would sync by like 9:30. Now they're good all the time. Also wanted to talk about Julian Achandra, who is Library's new head of marketing or something. Head of growth, sorry. He used to work for TikTok as the head of partnerships. Yeah, I want to talk about that. I'll talk about him at some point. I've talked about him on Library itself, but maybe I'll talk about him on the podcast as well. And I also had a story about running into one of my old mates who I used to live with that I thought would have been fun to talk about, but we didn't get to it, and yeah, I'll save it for another episode, I guess. And there's obviously a bunch of other stuff I could have talked about, especially because I didn't really hit on even many topics, really. So yeah, I'll save them for a later episode, maybe for the next solo episode, which is not going... I really hope it won't be next week. Next week I'm going... If I cannot do the episode with Bonehead next week, it's going to be the Mr. Robot episode, because I do want to get that one done before I forget what happened in Season 1, and I would like to start watching Season 2 at some point. So, yeah. I think that's pretty much everything for today. I guess I can shout out a channel that I've been watching recently. So I've actually been really into Minecraft content recently. Yeah, I know it's weird. But I've been watching a lot of Minecraft stuff. And one of the channels that I've been really into recently is a certain channel, do not play that audio, is a certain channel with 1 million subscribers called Fundy. So Fundy is a dude who likes to mess around with Minecraft mods, specifically mods that he makes himself. So basically all of his videos are like, hey, I'm messing around with the Minecraft dev kit, I'm gonna do some cool stuff. So some videos obviously do better than others, like, so I made Garfield in Minecraft, that somehow did really well. Or we have like, so I made a nightmare difficulty in Minecraft, so I actually made Minecraft impossible to beat. I changed sound effects, I changed Enderman's AI, I corrupted world generation, things like that. So I would, if you want to just watch some fun Minecraft content that isn't just like a let's play, this would be fun. So I made Minecraft Beds Fight Back. Okay, I might have to watch that one. Yeah, I really enjoy Minecraft content right now. Don't ask me why. I shouldn't. I don't play the game anymore, but maybe I'll stream it. That's possible. I haven't played the game since the game left beta, so there's a lot of new stuff in the game. And maybe when I start streaming, that'll be fun to try out. I don't know. I might do it. I don't know. It seems like a lot of people on Linux like Minecraft, so it could be something fun to try out. And it will work fine on my Arch Linux system without having to go and install anything else. So, yeah. I think that's everything. Before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Joachim, Corbinian, Craig, Nathan, Andrew, Montazar, Joseph, Peter D, Road, Tony, Donald, John, Mikhail, Spaghetti, Tees, and Zilva. If you would like to go support my work, then there will be linked to the Patreon and subscribe and all that stuff down below, as well as my Amazon affiliate links where you can buy the gearies in this channel or anything else you want, and I'll get a small kickback for it. Also, you can go check out my main channel, that is Brody Robertson, available on lots of different things like YouTube and Library and BitTube and stuff like that. And also check out this channel if you're watching the audio version. It is available on Library and YouTube. If you're watching the video version, it's available platforms that you have audio podcasts on. So I think that is pretty much everything for me, and I'm out. Did I even sign off last week's episode of the podcast? I honestly don't know. I was so tired last week after that nonsense. I don't remember if I even signed it off. Anyway, we're past 2 hours now, so yeah. I'm out.